My sister betrayed me with my husband for a year. My parents knew and covered it up. But I downloaded every message, every photo, and exposed everything at her baby shower in front of 50 guests. The baby wasn't even her husband's. I'm 30 years old, work in digital marketing, and what happened a few months ago still has me processing everything. You know, like trying to understand how my own family could do something like this to me. The thing is, I was always the younger sister, the one who didn't stand out as much, while Elise, my older sister by 2 years, was basically the star of the family. Everything she did was fine. Everything I did was, well, it was okay, but it was never enough. You know what I mean? Since we were girls, it was like that. She got good grades and my parents celebrated her like she'd won the Nobel Prize. I got the same grades and it was like, oh, that's nice, honey. And that was it. She got a boyfriend, and it was the event of the century. I got a boyfriend, and they barely noticed. I guess you get used to living in someone's shadow, even though it hurts. I met Trevor when I was like 24. He was 26, worked in finance, and seemed like a decent guy. I mean, he wasn't the most exciting man in the world, but he was stable, responsible, treated me well. We got married 2 years later, a small wedding, because according to my parents, there wasn't budget for anything big. Although curiously, when Elise married Wyatt a year earlier, the wedding was huge. But whatever. No point dwelling on it. Trevor and I moved to an apartment in Chicago, close to where we both worked, and life was normal, I guess. It wasn't perfect. We had our issues like any couple, but I thought we were fine, that we were a team. Elise and Wyatt lived like 20 minutes from us. He was an engineer and made pretty good money, and they seemed like the perfect couple, at least on the outside. My parents lived in the suburbs, like 40 minutes away, and we'd see each other often for family dinners, birthdays, those kinds of things. The truth is that looking back, I should have noticed the signs. But when you trust people, you're not looking for reasons to doubt them, right? Trevor started coming home late from work, more frequently, always with excuses about projects and meetings, and I believed him because, well, he was my husband. Elise suddenly wanted to see us more often. She'd organize dinners at her house or suggest we get together for coffee, and I thought we were finally developing a closer relationship as adult sisters. How stupid I was, seriously. There was a moment, I think it was like in February of last year, where I noticed Trevor was weird with his phone, like he'd take it to the bathroom, put it face down on the table, quickly change the screen when I got close. I asked him if something was wrong, and he said no, that he was stressed about work. I let it go because I didn't want to be that paranoid, controlling wife, but the feeling that something wasn't right wouldn't go away. Everything changed one day in March. Literally a random Tuesday that I now remember as the day my life split in two. I'd gone to my parents' house because my mom had asked me to help her with something on her computer, an email problem or something like that. I arrived around 3 in the afternoon. She wasn't there, but my dad told me she'd be back soon. To wait. I sat in the living room with my laptop to get ahead on work in the meantime, and my dad was in the kitchen talking on the phone. I wasn't paying attention to him until I heard Trevor's name, and then, I don't know, something in my brain activated and I started paying attention. My dad had the speaker on, and my mom's voice was coming out of the phone saying, "We need to make sure Gemma doesn't find out about Elise and Trevor, at least not yet. Elise says she's going to end it with him soon, but she needs time." And I just sat there, literally frozen, feeling like they'd thrown ice water on me. My dad responded something like, "I know, but it's getting harder and harder to keep this secret. And if Gemma finds out, it's going to be a disaster." And my mom said, "Well, Elise should have thought about that before sleeping with her sister's husband. But whatever. Now we have to protect her because you know how Gemma is. She's going to make a drama out of all this. And protect her." They wanted to protect Elise, not me. I was the collateral damage, the problem to manage. I got up as quietly as I could, grabbed my things, and left that house without my dad noticing. And the whole drive back to my apartment, all I could think was that my entire family had betrayed me. Not just Trevor. My sister. My parents. Everyone knew, and everyone had decided I didn't deserve to know the truth. When I got home, Trevor wasn't there, still at work according to his text message, and I sat on the couch trying to process everything. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, scream at him, let out all my rage, but another part, the part that had lived its whole life being the ignored younger sister, decided no. This time, it was going to be different. This time, I wasn't going to be the passive victim everyone expected me to be. So I waited for Trevor to arrive, acted completely normal. We had dinner together, watched TV, and when he went to sleep, I stayed up planning. The next morning, when he left for work, I grabbed his laptop that he'd left at home. The truth is, it didn't have a password because we were married and supposedly there were no secrets between us. How ironic. I started checking everything: his email, his messages, his photos, and there was all the evidence I needed. There were like hundreds of messages between Trevor and Elise, starting from almost a year ago. So they'd literally been together all that time while I lived in my idiotic bubble, thinking I had a normal family. The messages were disgusting. You know, sexual and romantic and full of "I love you" and "I miss you." And the worst part is, they talked about me, made fun of me. Elise would say things like, "Gemma is so naive. She never suspects anything." And Trevor would respond, "I know. Sometimes I feel guilty. But with you, I feel more alive than I've felt in years." There were photos too. I'm not going to go into details, but basically clear evidence that they'd been in hotels, at Elise's apartment when Wyatt wasn't there, even once in my own house while I was on a work trip. I downloaded everything, every message, every photo, every email, saved them on a USB drive, and also sent them to my personal email in a hidden folder. Trevor came home that night and I kept acting normal, smiling at him, asking him how his day was, and inside I felt like I was dying, but I stayed strong. The next few days were weird, like I was living a double life, being the normal wife on the outside, while inside I was planning my revenge. It sounds dramatic to say it like that, but it's the truth. I wanted them to pay, all of them. I kept gathering evidence, checking everything I could, and I discovered that my parents not only knew but had been actively helping Elise cover up the affair, lending her their house when she needed a place to see Trevor, giving her alibis. It was like discovering that your whole life had been a lie, that the people who were supposed to love you and protect you actually saw you as something secondary, something they could sacrifice for the well-being of the favorite daughter. Then, like 2 weeks after discovering everything, my mom called me. She sounded super casual, like, "Hey honey, how are you?" And after talking about nonsense, she says, "Hey, Elise is pregnant. Isn't that exciting? We're going to do a baby shower next month. Could you help me organize it?" And I just stood there with the phone in my hand thinking, seriously? Seriously, she's asking me to organize a baby shower for the woman who's sleeping with my husband? But then, I don't know. Something in my brain clicked, and I realized this was perfect. It was the opportunity I needed. So I told her, sure, that I'd love to help, that I was super happy for Elise, and that it was going to be the best baby shower ever. My mom sounded so relieved, like, "Oh, good that you're taking it like this. I knew I could count on you." I spent the next few weeks planning two things at the same time: the baby shower and my revenge, which were basically the same thing. I told my mom and Elise that I was organizing everything, that it was going to be a surprise, not to worry about anything. I hired the venue, sent out the invitations, ordered the food, everything you're supposed to do for a baby shower. But I was also working on something else: a PowerPoint presentation with all the evidence I'd collected. Photos of Trevor and Elise together, screenshots of their most incriminating messages, emails where my parents talked about how to keep the secret, everything organized in a super clear and chronological way. I also talked to my cousin Savannah, who's like an influencer or something and is always doing live streams, and I told her everything, without giving her too many details, but basically told her something important was going to happen at the baby shower and I needed her to broadcast it live. She agreed because, well, drama is content and she lives off that. The day of the baby shower arrived and I was surprisingly calm, like something in me had emotionally shut down and I was just functioning on autopilot. The venue looked nice. There were like 50 people, the whole family, Elise's friends, co-workers, Wyatt's mom and sisters. Elise was radiant in her light blue maternity dress. Trevor was sitting there next to Wyatt like they were best friends, and my parents were playing proud grandparents-to-be. I looked at all of them and thought, in a few hours, your lives are going to explode. Savannah already had her phone ready with the live stream active. There were like 100 people watching at first, her normal followers with no idea what was about to come. We did all the typical baby shower activities, the stupid games, the food, opening presents, and everyone was happy and laughing, and I kept waiting for the perfect moment. Finally, when we finished opening the presents and everyone was gathered, I stood up front and said, Well, I have one more surprise for Elise. I prepared a special presentation with photos and memories. My mom looked super happy, like, "Aw, how sweet, Gemma," and Elise was smiling with no idea what was coming. I connected my laptop to the projector I'd rented specifically for this, and the presentation started. The first slides were normal. Photos of Elise and me as girls, cute and nostalgic things, and people were saying, "Aw, how sweet." But then things changed. Photos appeared of Trevor and Elise kissing in a hotel, and there was a death-like silence in the room. The next slide had text messages between them, super intimate and explicit, and people were starting to murmur in confusion. Elise had gone white, literally like all the blood had drained from her face, and Trevor stood up from his chair but didn't know what to do. My parents tried to get to the projector, but I stood in front and said really loud, "No, everyone's going to see this, the whole truth." Savannah had her phone pointed at the screen and the number of live stream viewers was already like at 500. I kept going through slides, more photos, more messages, emails where my parents talked about how to keep everything secret, conversations where Elise and Trevor planned to meet while I was working or visiting a friend. There was a slide that said, "Timeline of the affair with specific dates of when they'd met. Where? For how long?" Wyatt's mom started crying. Elise's friends were in shock. And my mom was yelling at me to turn that off immediately. That I was crazy. That I was ruining everything. And I just laughed and said, "I'm ruining everything? Me? You guys ruined my marriage, my family, my trust. And now finally everyone's going to know what kind of people you really are." Wyatt walked up to Elise and asked her if it was true, like with a broken voice. And she tried to deny it, but he pointed at the screen and said, "Those are photos of you. Those are your messages. How are you going to deny this?" Elise started crying and saying she was sorry, that it had been a mistake, that she only loved him. And Wyatt literally pushed her away from him. Not hard, but like getting her out of his space, and told her, "Never talk to me again. Never come near me again. This marriage is over." Trevor tried to approach me to talk, but I told him, "Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. I already contacted a lawyer, and you're going to receive the divorce papers next week." Half the people in the room were already leaving. Some recording everything with their phones, others just wanting to escape the drama, and Savannah's live stream already had like 2,000 people watching. What happened next was basically total chaos. Wyatt left the venue, his sisters took his mom, who was still crying, my parents were trying to calm Elise, who was having like a panic attack, and Trevor just stood there not knowing what to do, like looking at me with this pleading face that disgusted me. I grabbed my things and left. And as I was walking to my car, I could hear my mom yelling at me to come back, that we needed to talk, but I just kept walking. That night I stayed at a hotel because I didn't want to be in the apartment with Trevor, and when I checked my phone I had like 100 messages and missed calls from my whole family, but I ignored them all. Savannah's live stream video had gone viral in her community. Thousands of people had watched and shared it, and everyone was talking about this. The next few days were intense. Wyatt contacted me and thanked me for exposing everything, said he'd had suspicions but never had proof, and now he finally knew the truth. He asked me if I had copies of all the evidence, because he was going to need it for the divorce, and I sent him everything. He moved fast. Literally in less than a week, he'd already kicked Elise out of his house, had changed the locks, and had started divorce proceedings. Elise had to move back with my parents because she had nowhere else to go. She didn't work because Wyatt earned enough for both, and she dedicated herself to being a housewife. Trevor also tried to come back home, but I'd changed the locks, had taken out all his stuff and left it in boxes at the entrance. And when he tried to talk to me, I told him through the door that everything should go through my lawyer. But then things got even worse for Elise. Like the universe decided she hadn't suffered enough. Turns out one of the people who was at the baby shower was Jenna, a close friend of Elise's. And when she saw all the evidence, something clicked in her head about her own husband, Carson's behavior. Jenna started checking Carson's phone, I think a week after the baby shower. And guess what? She found messages between him and Elise too. Basically, Elise wasn't just having an affair with Trevor, but she'd also been sleeping with Carson, her supposed best friend's husband, and this had been happening at the same time. Jenna contacted me furious, sent me screenshots of the messages, and I was like, seriously? How many more men? The thing is, Elise hadn't just destroyed my marriage, she destroyed Jenna's too, and probably who knows how many more. Jenna confronted Carson, and he admitted everything. Said he and Elise had been seeing each other for months, that she'd basically seduced him. Although obviously he was also guilty because he was an adult who made decisions. But what made everything even more dramatic was that when Jenna started doing the math on dates and probabilities, she realized that the baby Elise was expecting very likely wasn't Wyatt's but Carson's. Wyatt had been traveling a lot for work during the period when Elise would have conceived, and the dates didn't line up well. Jenna told me all this, and I literally couldn't believe it. Like, the situation kept getting worse and worse for Elise, and part of me felt a dark satisfaction watching her life fall apart. Wyatt, when he found out about the possibility that the baby wasn't his, demanded a prenatal paternity test. Elise at first refused, said it was dangerous for the baby. How could he ask for that? But Wyatt and his lawyer pressured her until she had no choice. They did the test like in May, a month after the baby shower, and the results came out 2 weeks later. The baby was Carson's, not Wyatt's. Wyatt called me when he got the results. His voice sounded dead, like completely empty, and he told me, "It wasn't mine, it was never mine." All this time I was excited about a baby that wasn't even mine. I didn't know what to tell him. I told him I was really sorry and that he didn't deserve any of this. And he just said, "At least now I can close this chapter completely. I don't have anything tying me to her anymore." Trevor, when he found out about Carson and that the baby wasn't Wyatt's, also ended whatever there was between him and Elise. I guess he thought that when he divorced me, he'd end up with Elise, like their happy ending or whatever. But when he discovered she'd been with Carson at the same time, he literally sent her a message telling her she was a liar and a manipulator and that he never wanted to know about her again. So Elise ended up completely alone, pregnant with Carson's baby, who also left her after Jenna confronted him and demanded he have no contact with her, living at my parents' house, who were now dealing with the social shame of everything that had happened because literally the whole community had found out through the viral video. My parents tried to contact me several times. They wanted us to talk as a family, to forgive and move forward. Basically, they wanted me to act like nothing had happened, so they could maintain the facade of a perfect family. My mom left me like 10 voicemails saying I'd overreacted, that the baby shower thing had been cruel, that Elise was devastated and depressed. And I just thought, seriously? Did they expect me to keep the secret? To let them keep lying to me and using me? I sent them a text message, the only contact I've had with them since then, telling them that if they wanted to have a relationship with me someday, they'd have to acknowledge what they did, genuinely apologize, and understand why I was angry. They never responded to that. I guess they're too busy taking care of their favorite daughter. The divorce with Trevor was finalized in August, like 5 months after the baby shower. He tried to fight for the apartment and some things, but my lawyer used all the evidence of the affair to make sure I came out ahead. I kept the apartment, my car, and a good chunk of our savings. Trevor had to move in with a friend and now has to start from zero, basically. And honestly, I don't care how things go for him. Wyatt also finalized his divorce around the same time. He kept his house and Elise didn't get much because the affair and another man's child played against her legally. Jenna and Carson also got divorced. She moved in with her mom with her 2 kids and Carson had to start paying child support. Elise had the baby in September, a boy, and from the little I've heard, she's living with my parents, struggling with everything. Carson has to pay child support but doesn't want to have anything to do with her beyond that. His own kids don't even know they have a half-brother. Elise's social life is basically destroyed. All her friends abandoned her when they found out about Carson, and who knows if there were more. Her reputation is ruined, and she's trapped living like a teenager at our parents' house at 32 years old. I'm not going to lie and say I don't feel any satisfaction seeing this, because I do. After a lifetime of being the forgotten sister and then being betrayed in the worst possible way, there's something that feels like justice, seeing her face the consequences of her actions. I'm living my life now, working, going out, with friends, focusing on myself for the first time in a long time. I haven't started dating anyone yet, because the truth is, my trust in people is pretty destroyed, and I'm going to need time to heal from all this. I'm going to therapy, which helps. My therapist says I did the right thing exposing everything, because keeping it secret would have only destroyed me from the inside. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I did it, having exposed it so publicly at the baby shower. And the answer is no. Maybe it sounds vengeful or cruel, but they took away my agency, my right to know the truth. They treated me like my feelings didn't matter, and I took back my power the only way I could. If I'd confronted Trevor and Elise privately, If I'd talked to my parents quietly, they all would have minimized what happened, would have tried to control the narrative, to make me look like the crazy one or the one overreacting. Last week, I saw my mom at the supermarket. It was super awkward. She was in one aisle, and I was in another, and we saw each other from a distance. She started walking toward me, but I just turned around and went to another section. I'm not ready to talk to her. I don't know if I ever will be. Part of me misses having family, misses what I thought we had. But another part knows that what we had was a lie built on my ignorance and my willingness to be the daughter who always settled for less. I'm not that person anymore. I can't be that person. I've talked to Wyatt a couple times, just casual messages asking how he is. He tells me he's better, that he started dating someone new, that he's rebuilding his life. I'm happy for him, truly. He was another victim in all this and didn't deserve anything that happened. I don't know what's going to happen long term with my family, if someday we'll be able to have some kind of relationship or if this is permanent. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on healing, on building a life where I'm the priority, not the plan B, not the forgotten sister, not the naive wife. There are days where I feel good, empowered even, and there are days where I feel completely broken and wonder how people who were supposed to love me could betray me so completely. But I keep moving forward, one day at a time, and that's enough for now.